Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger. My friends, Season 3 of Guilty Gear Strive is here. Easiest way to tell? Well, hey, we got some fancy new menus. Been a hot minute, the old classic menu, it did its job, I suppose. But this certainly looks a lot more sharp and a lot more nice. And of course, Season 3 is a lot more than a menu change, right? So what we're going to do in this video is go over all the big changes and showcase to you in a visual way just exactly what is different about Season 3 of Strive. Obviously, there's all sorts of character changes. Some characters even have all new moves, and other characters that don't have new moves yet will get new moves throughout later patches throughout the rest of the year and beginning in the next year as well. And there's some pretty major just system level changes, like universal, benefits everyone. And well, let's start with those first and let's get right into it. So this will be time-stamped for your easy use. So skip forward to whatever makes sense for you. Although if you could leave a like, it always helps. And otherwise, let's get right into it. So here we are. And just to prove it's Season 3, hey, we got Johnny. So Johnny is here, the first character of Season 3, more to come. And a lot of the universal changes that matter a lot in Season 3 of Strive has to do with the burst gauge specifically. So if you're looking at the burst gauge, you might notice, well, there's all sorts of fancy fire effects going on here. What's different now? So if we empty out our gauge here, you can see here there's a bit of a green line, right? That is very specifically to denote the halfway point, because once you're at the halfway point now, you unlock all new moves. One is more offensive, one is more defensive. And they're both very, very powerful, and everybody can use them. But before we even get into that, burst as a whole is better. So let me just use the base burst and notice the regeneration time. So look at the regeneration time that's happening here for Testament and this footage here, which is before the patch, how it's always been. Now, either way, regardless, like it's slower, right? Like it's never been a fast regeneration, but the regeneration itself is overall quite a bit faster in Season 3 compared to how it was, even on this base neutral level where we're not doing anything, right? So the burst gauge with these new options, it refills faster because they want you to use these options quite a bit. And yes, naturally, burst is still burst, right? And some other changes too, but we'll get into it in a little bit. Now, let's talk new mechanics. So the first thing here, we talked about the two new special moves, one offensive, one defensive. Let's talk the offensive one, Wild Assault. So the motion for this is just quarter circle forward and dust, and this is the same for everybody. And you do a cool rushing forward attack. Now, what's the deal? Basically, like, why do I care? Why should you care? One, well, it's just another attack. Attacks are always handy to have. Two, how about we have a look at Testament here? Look at Testament's burst gauge. So when Testament blocks, oh, it drains their burst, huh? And yes, just so you know, very much the same here on guard or on regular hit. If this connects, the burst gauge is going away, which means if you use this in a combo at all and, well, they get hit, that means no more bursting out. They don't have the meter. So this can guarantee an unburstable combo for one. Also, everyone can hold the button, specifically hold dust when doing the motion. It slightly delays the move, but when you slightly delay the move, you do more damage and it drains more gauge, more burst gauge from the enemy as well. So it's basically a stronger version of what it already is. And now here's one of the really good things about it. For characters with more range, like Johnny's actually a pretty good example, right? Like, oh, I hit with the tip of the one move and sometimes I can hit with the follow-up heavy slash. Sometimes I can't. It's difficult, right? Who knows? But with this move, it being effectively special cancelable, right? Like any special move, you just go directly into stuff. So no more whiffing because it definitely will always have the range. Also, for certain versions, because there's actually a couple different versions of this move, you can just do normals out of it. So yeah, it's like a special move. Sure, you cancel into it, but unlike a special move, you can just do more normals out of it. So you can just do something like this and go nuts. So it's very easy offense. And it turns situations in neutral where you really wouldn't get much. Like Ramlethal is a classic example here, right? Slash, heavy slash, it's good. It owns a lot of the screen. Something you absolutely want to do all the time, but you don't get too much of it if you just get it for like the absolute tip of the moves, right? But with Wild Assault, not necessarily at like every possible range, right? But you can get follow-ups, right? So it can turn a random poke into a lot more because you can get a guaranteed follow-up and then keep going from there. Also, specifically in the corner charge version does launch, so you can just get follow-ups and all that kind of stuff and go for whatever greasy stuff you're looking for. Now, I did mention there's a couple different versions. This actually depends on what kind of character you are. So certain characters, like we saw here, Johnny, Ram, like characters with good buttons that want to convert off their buttons too, like, and also say much the same here, like Testament, right? Characters like that, this is really good for combos. But say if we're on block, you know, it's not much, right? You still drain that burst gauge, which is good, but nothing too special. Now let's switch a character over. For some other characters, like say Baiken. Baiken, when you do the Wild Assault, you can notice here, when Testament blocks, it's a guard crush. And this is just straight up plus on block, right? So, still has that combo ability options, like you can still cancel it, and you can still cancel normals out of it, like the other thing before. But generally, it's not as fast startup. But with the guard crush, you basically just like, okay, I'm attacking. I don't care if you hit or block or whatever, because if you hit, you hit. And if you block, I get plus frames. So you can use this basically to bully people around. And the third type just straight up has invincibility. So as you can see here, we'll have Testament attack us. And if we time it correctly, we can just go through the attack, no problem. So the thing about this one that's different than the other one is, due to it being invincible, there is no possible follow-ups like the other two versions have. So, you know, you got to give somewhere, right? And the invincibility is not necessarily on frame 1. But still, for like, say, a character with Goldlewis with not amazing defensive options, you know, if you can happen to specifically call out the move that's coming, you know what's going to happen, you can invincible your way through and just smash people. So basically a little something for everybody, right? Combos, pressure, an offensive defense with some invincibility frames. Everyone benefits from this mechanic, right? It's going to add a lot to the game. And for certain characters, I figure it's going to be matchup defining, right? Like for Goldlewis to have an approach that's invincible, you know, for the old boy, that's pretty all right. That's pretty all right. It's definitely something he could use. It'll remain to be seen, you know, the long-term consequences, but for now, it's definitely a cool addition to the game. So we have the Wild Assault. That's our offensive special use of burst gauge. Now we have the second part here, the defensive half. This is the Deflect Shield. And the Deflect Shield, you know, half your burst gauge is a price to pay, but rest assured you are very safe while this is up. So let me give you the base level of strength. So you do it, and it's basically push block. So let's give you a base example here. So Testament is going to do a basic block strength. And it's not really something we can challenge and, you know, like, it's just basic block strength, right? About all there is to it. And if you try to hit a button, you'll get smacked. The thing about Deflect Shield, though, is you can cancel into this even while actively blocking. You don't need to wait for a gap in the enemy's offense or anything of the sort. Like, it could literally just be jabs, right? Completely airtight, and you input the emotion, and, well, then what happened there, right? We pushed them back. So, in situations where you know what the offense is, if the offense is predictable, you can absolutely turn the tables. So once again, let's take that block string we saw earlier, right? So one of the main weaknesses of this specific block string, using the Deflect Shield in mind, between the second and third hits here, we call that shield in, Testament's going to go for stand heavy slash and completely whiff. Like going for, you know, the basic ABC offense, right? And that's going to not work out in your favor. And if you're completely whiffing attack, we can definitely get some punishes in. So it turns out Baiken can bust out the GAT. And boom, we got a guaranteed punish because they did a predictable block string. And of course, there's a bunch of other options and punishes you can go for, right? But that's one of the beauties of it, right? If you have easy peasy brain dead offense, I know your strings that you're going to do on block before you even do them. You can suss out where with the push block, you can make them whiff certain attacks and then get guaranteed punishes. So this punishes brain dead basic offense. And of course, naturally too, it just, you know, at the bare minimum, it's like, get off me. I don't want to deal with you. Let's reset the full screen, right? So that's good too. Also, if it was just that, that'd already be good enough, right? But it has another fun feature. So when you're doing the motion here, you are basically effectively invulnerable to all forms of attack. So say the opponent goes for a low. Well, if they go for a low, it gets them. And even if it's a projectile, as you can see, it still pushes them back, right? And say they go for a high. If they go for a high and overhead, well, same story. It blocks it. So not only does it block and push back, it also gets all overheads and it gets all lows. So if you're in a situation where maybe it's not the brain dead block string, but you know it's some sort of 50-50 coming your way, overhead low, and you don't know which way to block, Deflect Shield says, no, I got you. I'll get overhead and low. We'll ride this one out together. Now, the one thing, like any good defensive mechanic should, any parry, all that kind of stuff, unless you're like JP in Street Fighter 6, it is not immune to throws. If you're JP, well, JP's not in this game, right? JP would laugh off the throw, but here it's Guilty Gear, so whatever, right? But yeah, so basically anything short of a throw, nah, bro, we're not dealing with it. Once again, too, the cost is very large. Like, if you do this, you can't burst anymore, right? So that's going to be a penalty you have to pay. But as a defensive mechanic that everyone can get, you know, some characters with invincible reversals, whatever, they'll take the chance. A lot of characters don't have invincible reversals in this game, right? So, you know, for your Potemkins of the world, all that kind of stuff, who would kill for any kind of defense, they now have some defense to work with. So everyone can do it. It's very strong. Play around with it yourself. I think it's going to be overall to the benefit of the game to add this. I'm always a fan of a good, solid defensive mechanic that's reasonable. And I think half your meter for your burst is a reasonable cost for this. Because, you know, the window's not huge. If you whiff it, you're going to get blown up. But yeah, still overall, really handy, really strong. I like it. So now, the burst gauge refills faster than it's ever filled before. We got really strong, unique mechanics tied to the burst gauge. But, you know, what about the burst itself? So some things have changed about the basic burst. So one, this is a big one. If you do raw gold burst, you no longer get all your meter. You get the positive bonus. And the positive bonus is good, don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily all the meter all at once, right? So keep that in mind, especially Potemkin players. Raw gold burst, maybe not as advantageous. You do refill your burst gauge a lot faster if you do hit the raw gold burst. So that's also something in its benefit, I suppose. But yeah, it is changed up a bit. Now, what's changed up a lot is blue burst. So blue burst is the kind of burst you do like when you're actively blocking, right? And the thing about that is, well, that. So blue burst hits the whole screen now. So if you're getting hit with any kind of projectile, looking at you, Happy Chaos, if someone chooses to blue burst, they can just basically smack the enemy back and go from there. Now, of course, if you're looking to get around zoning, sending them back literally full screen probably isn't going to help you because they're going to zone you even more. But still, basically, no matter what, a blue burst can't miss. That's kind of the big deal, right? Like, if you're like me and you're a bad burster, like, oh, this is where you burst, right? And normally, Season 1, Season 2, you would die because you completely whiff. This will still, at the very least, hit the whole screen. So basically, it's a big baby band-aid for bad bursters like me and you, right? So the bad burst babies, we're eating good. Timing, who cares? It hits full screen now, we're good to go. Now, this one's a bit more quick, but there's no more weight system in Guilty Gear Strive. So the weight system is not as pronounced as it is in some other games, like say Virtua Fighter, but it was always there, right? Basically, someone like Potemkin, if you juggled him, would not go as high. Someone like May would go higher. And for the most part, most combos in this game are pretty universal. And if you ever dropped a combo on Potemkin or May, because like, oh, what happened there? That was the reason. Now, basically, everything works on everybody, minus some hitbox specific issues, right? So it's small, but basically your combos are going to be more universal than they already were. For a lot of people, you won't even notice the change. Me, I don't like weight systems. I think it's something that's a legacy system that should stay in the past in fighting games. I don't like the quote-unquote depth it offers, because it just makes you memorize more stuff without actually adding depth, in my opinion. But anyways, regardless, it's gone, so don't worry about it. And to cover some universal stuff, because it's going to come up a lot in the character specifics, a lot of things like counters are gone for a lot of characters on specific moves. Moves that are very easy to frame trap with, pressure with. They can just kind of go, and if you get the counter hit, then basically you win the round, right? So a lot of moves have had the counter effect removed. Maybe got some buffs to compensate, maybe not, depending on the character. Other things like supers, pretty much across the board, supers are going to be doing less damage than they did before. That's to just, I guess, increase match length overall, because, you know, Guilty Gear Strive's a game where you can die pretty quick. There's a bunch of moves that have increased damage scaling, also keeping that in mind, basically so you don't die as fast. That's character to character. I will put the full patch notes in the video description, as it's impossible to cover every minute change, especially when it comes to like scaling a damage. So make sure to check that out, right? But otherwise, that's the universal stuff. And now let's get into the character specifics. So let's start with Soul. So few things, small things out of the gate. Crouch kick says reduce startup, so has to be at least 1 frame faster. Unfortunately, though, they did not give us the specific numbers on the frame data, so we just got to take their word for it. Stand S now has reduced horizontal blowback, meaning they're closer to you, so less likely to whiff after the fact. Now here's a change you're going to see across a couple characters. So when it comes to uppercuts and invincibility, so the heavy version of Soul's Volcanic Viper is still invincible, but it's not invincible on frame 1. So don't get me wrong here, the slash version is still invincible frame 1. But if you're looking for a wake up, get off me move here, that kind of stuff, the heavy version and the extra damage that it provides is no longer the go-to. You will want to be going for the slash version, as that is the one that is invincible on frame 1. So definitely a nerf, but this is kind of a more universal change across quite a few characters. So now here's an interesting change for the aerial version of Bandit Bringer. So before, you could hold it, and you can still hold it, but now the held version actually has a tangible difference in terms of damage. So it, well, just does more damage. So as it states here, it increases the attack potency, and also if it's held, as you can see, you get a nice little bounce. So basically, straight buff. More damage, more options. That's great. Now, straight nerf, basically. So Bandit Revolver can no longer trigger a big boy counter hit. As mentioned, this is a universal change. So now it's just not even like a light, right? It'll still counter hit in that it'll say counter, but you don't get the big stop and thus all the combos and all the kind of things that are applicable from it. So if you're looking to frame trap, you kind of got to commit to something other than just hoping for the big boy counter and getting a gigantic combo. So yes, it does suck. But once again, this is more of a universal change. A lot of characters will be feeling this pinch. They want to change just how like frame traps counter hit work just across the board. Other kind of across the board changes, wild throw. A lot of command grabs are eating a small damage nerf. That's just how it's going to be. Once again, he's not the only one affected by this. That's just where the game's going. Same thing here like Night Raid Vortex. The damage scaling in a longer combo will not be the same as it was. It's going to be less because this is once again a universal change. Same with Fafnir. The bounce not quite as high. Damage scaling is increased, but there is good news for you. Because the range, well, the range is been increased a fair bit, as you can see here, right? So it's just a bit quicker and more range. So indirect comparison, here's how it was before. And you can see the whiff, right? And from like even further than that range out, easy connects. So that is a tangible buff in that way. It is a much stronger neutral tool. So if you're just looking for random, I don't want to play neutral, I just want to skip neutral, just hit button go, this is definitely going to be a much better option for it. So yeah, for Soul, sort of a mixed bag. That's kind of how it is every patch, I guess. But that's where it is. So for Kai, out of the gate, a really fun one, just stand S is faster. So once again, they don't say exactly how much faster, but even if it's 1 frame faster, that's still a really big buff. Now on the flip, Crouch S, that is slower. Once again, no frame data, but it might be even just 1 frame slower. But yeah, so when it comes to poking low, so not so much, but stand S, faster, that is straight up good. Also, on that note, stand heavy slash, also reduce startup. So your big boy pokes are doing better than they were before. And for Kai, that's just a straight up good deal now, isn't it? Now, some other changes that aren't as noticeable, you'd think would be better just based off the patch note. So stun edge and charge stun edge. So it says increase the launch height while reducing horizontal blowback distance. So what this basically means is when you catch them with a jump, they won't get blown back as far. Now, just looking at it, they still get blown back far enough. But before, this would be literally full screen, right? Now, if you catch them jumping, well, it's not quite exactly full screen, so they are pushed back less. But I don't know. I could stand to be a better buff, I guess, but that's how it is, right? So you won't throw them back exactly full screen if they land on projectile or if you're using it in the combo. They will be just a little bit closer. Stun Dipper. Ate some nerfs. So increased base damage scaling. Once again, this is pretty universal. A lot of characters are going to need that. Increased startup, so it is slower. Increased recovery, so it's more punishable on block. Now it says added launch effect. You tell me, man, this is the old version of the game compared to the current version of the game, and the launch looks about the same to me. You definitely don't get no follow-ups or nothing like that, right? So, I don't know. I'm not a Kai main. You can let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, it's kind of mostly just worse across the board, which sucks, but them's the breaks. Bunch of other more universal changes. Fodra Arc, increased base damage scaling, uppercuts, the heavy version, just like Soul. Not frame 1 invincible anymore. Still invincible throughout most of the move, just not frame 1. But don't worry, the slash version is still frame 1 invulnerable. They just don't want you getting big damage off a fully invulnerable move. And basically, more just kind of universal nerfs like damage scaling, all that kind of stuff. So the big change to me is definitely the pokes. Pokes being better. Kai is a pokey boy. And when they're fast to start up, stand slash, stand heavy slash. That is, once again, just only to his strict benefit. So he's just better in neutral in that regard when it comes to pure poking. Now, May's got some interesting changes, not the least of which an all-new special move, which we'll get into in a second here. But let's start with the overhead for kick, right? So overhead. Now, forces crouching on hit. Interesting. Also recovers faster, although it has to have a slower startup to make up for it. But, you know, hey, she can combo off it by herself, right? So if you're looking to do something like this, hey, very possible now, right? Also, it is now special cancelable. So if you want to do wacky stuff like this, welcome to it, I guess. So there you go. Forward heavy slash, another change here. So the regular version basically can't bounce. The charged heavy version, don't worry, that's basically the same as it was. But the base version is just a poke now. Now for Mr. Dolphin, one change, a bit of a nerf. There's no more held or normal versions. So say like I do the slash version, the regular version goes that far. Before, if I just pressed it, it goes shorter version. If I held it, it go longer version. Now, regardless, it goes the one fixed distance. And all versions of Mr. Dolphin have more recovery on whiff. Now, on the flip, the change here is if you hit punch while doing it, that cancels it now. So basically, it always goes as long as it possibly could, but you hitting punch cancels out the recovery of the move, and then you just kind of stop in place. So there's a bit more of just choice in how far you want to go, because you can cancel it out whenever you want. Now, hey, I mentioned that new move, right? So if you hit kick during Mr. Dolphin, you literally do a jump now. Like, oh, hey, Mr. Dolphin's coming my way. I guess I better block. And then you can say, no, dummy. I actually just canceled that into a jump, and now I'm swinging on you on the overhead. So suffice it to say, things have changed a bit, right? Like, the fact that you can fake out before you even connect. So that makes the slash version more valuable, right? Because, you know, unlike the heavy version, it's not plus on block. So they're worrying about blocking and then taking their turn. And you can say, nah, man, jump heavy slash, let's go. Like, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of possibilities here, I think. Now, on that note, just like so many other moves in the game, increased base damage scaling. This is not a Mei-specific nerf. This is most characters in the game. That's just how it's going to be. More damage scaling on the supers. That's across the board once again. So a lot of universal changes are affecting her. The big thing is now basically overhead's dynamic has changed quite a bit. And now Mr. Dolphin, it's a whole new brave world because you can have multiple angles of attack from it. Now Axl, two fairly significant changes. One, crouch punch. The recovery of the move has been curtailed a fair bit. So basically, you recover faster, right? So here's a comparison from before the patch where you just do it and just jump right away, right? Visually, I know it doesn't look like it's too much, but it does actually feel noticeable in-game when you're playing with it. They didn't give us the numbers on the recovery, so I can only go by feel, but I can definitely feel it. It definitely recovers a good deal faster. Now here's an actual pretty big change. So Sickle Flash. So not only does it knock back further, and it knocks back a lot further. Like basically, if you hit it basically pretty much any range, the enemy's going to go full screen. So that's great. It gets you away from them so you can go back and doing, you know, fun little zoning things, right? Because that's why you're playing the character. So it helps you accomplish your goals. Also, when you get knocked down, it's a proper tumble effect, not the invincible recovery roll. So that combined with the fact that the explosion, they've upped the active frames quite a bit, as you can see. So even though I didn't actually combo from there, the fact that even after the recovery is done, Testament still got hit by it, that's really good. So they're going to wake up into that, right? And yes, of course, you know, depending on the distance, you can also make a natural combo as well, right? But it makes them go back further. You can pressure them while they're waking up because of more active frames because of the explosion. So it lets you do the Axl thing just a lot better across the board. And that's really, really, really good. Now, what's not as good? Rainfall. So basically, if you use it a lot of times in the combo, it's going to juggle less and less and less. So maybe you got to rethink some of your combo routes. And of course, some damage scaling on supers. It does say Axl Bomber is now affected by momentum. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm not an Axl player, right? So I couldn't find a way to make it like seem anything more than I remember it. So if you got some setup to really carry that momentum, please let me know in the comments below. But overall, like, not huge changes, you know? But just crouch punch being better. Like, you know, you're definitely not going to die if you whiff it. You'll actually at least have the chance to block, right? That's good. And Sickle Flash, just the increased knockback, the proper tumble, the fact that the explosion follow-up now has so many more active frames. You do have to time it, right? It's not guaranteed. But the fact that it has so many more active frames, they can wake up into it very easily, right? Like, I like all that kind of stuff. So, Axl seems to be doing all right. Now, Chipp, in my opinion, is mostly nerfs, but there is some interesting changes. So just like May, his overhead has been changed up a bit. So it's a little bit slower, which, you know, not as ideal, right? But, so this also forces crouching on a standing opponent, you know, as in they're not being hit in an air combo. So now, a lot of self-sufficiency in the overhead. That's really handy. And also, on hit or on block, it is special cancelable now. So you can go for some gimmicks, to say the least. So the base overhead is going to get a lot more interesting, to say the least. Like, it's just really, really good. Other small things, stand heavy slash now gives him a little bit of forward momentum. Before he would stand perfectly in place. Now he moves forward just a little bit. Stuff like jump dust. So jump dust now will wall bounce the enemy if they're in the corner. So potentially all new combo routes will come from this. And aerial alpha blade now is a faster startup. Yes, faster startup. This annoying friggin' move. So they don't state exactly, but even 1 frame faster startup would be a lot. So that's a feather in his cap. Now here's where things get annoying. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is a universal change with a lot of characters, but I feel this hurts Chipp more than the average character. So off his Rekka series, he no longer gets big boy counters. So it doesn't matter what it is. There's no big screen stop. There's no massive, you know, bounce or whatever, depending on the move you hit with. You are just going to get the counter as it is. And then that's kind of it, right? For Chipp, staggering the Rekkas, specifically fishing for counter hits, was a big part of the game plan. And now it is, well, no part of the game plan. So this, once again, universal. A lot of characters are feeling this one, but I feel Chipp feels it more than the rest. Other things too, supers, less damage overall, command grab, less damage overall. Once again, universal changes. But yeah, overall, he's got some silly things, but I feel like a lot of the core game plan, especially just for fishing with counter hits with the Rekkas, that's gone now, so that definitely hurts them quite a bit. Now, Potemkin. Potemkin's got some interesting changes here, not the least of which, stand punch. If you know, you know, but otherwise, let's spell it out, eh? So, since the game's start, stand punch could never hit a crouching opponent, no matter what. Doesn't matter how close you were, could never hit a crouching opponent. Now, it can hit a crouching opponent. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but considering it's such like a basic thing that, you know, your quick attack, because, you know, Potemkin doesn't have a lot of quick attacks, right? Could hit someone crouching, he can now do it. Now, it's not a huge hitbox as far as hitting crouchers go, and specifically if they are blocking, you'll push them out very quick, right? But just the fact that it's an option is really, really cool. So that is a very fun, interesting buff. Even if it's boring on paper, if you play Potemkin, trust me, it's a big one. Now, also a pretty big buff. Forward Mega Fist. Just the regular Mega Fist. No fancy Karas or whatever, right? Just the regular vanilla Mega Fist. Now bounces on regular hit, not counter hit. Just regular hit, it bounces. So in and of itself, this doesn't do too much. But when it does connect as a counter hit, That means, and this is a very basic level example, but now that we have that bounce, we can get quite a bit, right? Before, if you connected from a Mega Fist from far away, like your options and what you were going to get are very, very low. Now you can actually get some damage. So basically, it just adds a lot more teeth to the basic Mega Fist, which is great, right? A lot of people I know the Kara techniques are difficult for you, right? And fair enough, because they are difficult. Like, you have to put in some real time with Potemkin to be able to reliably do that stuff, right? So now, off the basic Mega Fist, without having to do the Kara, back Mega Fist, all that kind of stuff, you can get some real stuff off of it. So that's really, really good. Some other things, Slide Head no longer has a Guard Crush effect on block. So just keep that in mind. Also, it says here, the knockback's increased and recovery is reduced. FDB, Flick. So Flick, it says a lot of things. Reduce startup, expanded frontal hitbox on startup, increase active frame. Like, it says a lot of words. Here's the reality of it. Flick now is a natural combo from shoulder. So forward kick, shoulder, and a flick. You don't need counter hit. You don't need anything fancy. It just actually is a real combo. Took long enough, right? But here we are, Brave New World and all that, right? A basic 2-hit combo on the difficulty level of like Ryu crouch, medium kick, and the fireball. Potemkin now has a basic building block, right? So that's just really, really handy. And that's about it. Heavenly Buster got damaged nerf because, you know, like a lot of supers are getting damage nerfs, right? But yeah, so Potemkin is probably still not going to be great, but he has basic building blocks now, right? Like Mega Fist is better. Stand jab can hit crouchers. He's got basic combo options now off a forward advancing move. Like, Brave New World, man. So I think you'll like it. So Faust, some fun stuff because he's got all new stuff. So one, the basic item toss. We all know it, right? So item toss has another layer to it now. In that when you hold item toss, he eats it. So what does eating item toss do exactly? Well, it stores it. So the last thing we ate was the trumpet, right? So now, whenever we want, we know we have a trumpet because we ate it. Then I can hit down, down, punch. And then trumpet's what comes out next. So that's basically you controlling what we have, right? So, okay, I got puppet. Puppet's really good. I'm going to hold on to puppet for a second. I don't want to use it just yet. And then down, down, punch. Then we use it. Now, one thing that's actually very strong about this, it's not immediately apparent. Because it looks like it has a bit of an animation to it, right? And the animation's actually a lie. You can cancel out of that like immediately, and you still get the item toss. So last thing we had was banana. Boom, banana comes out, right? So when you're going for it, feel free to just do like literally anything else right when the animation is seen, because it will work out that way. So keep a quick eye, because if you only have a split second, you better know which one you ate, right? But you don't have to just randomly toss and hope. Although, well, you have to randomly hope, right? Because, you know, you still have no control over what you're going to eat. But still, it's an interesting layer to the character that you can control an aspect of it. You know what item you got next in the roulette of items. And you can hold on to it and then deploy it at will, which is not an option he's really had before, right? So I'll have to see how it plays out long term, but I think it's actually very, very interesting. And the other interesting thing here is thrust. So thrust still does the thing, right? But he has a new version if you hold the button. So he delays it, as you can see if you hold it. And the big deal here is specifically, if we set the enemy to block, it is now a guard crush, as you can see, right? So you actually get some plus frames out of this. So basically you're doing this if you expect them to block. You get a really decent amount of chip damage out of this too, right? Versus like the regular version, just a tiny little bit. If you hold it, that's a lot. That's like Goldlewis level of chip, right? So if you're looking to just do some guard breaks, get some frames in, and just get some damage in through block, this is a way to do it. And of course, you know, if it hits, well, it still hits, so you can do all the usual stuff with it. It just happens to do more damage, so handily enough, right? Just another layer for the character. And some other small things like supers, once again, nerf damage. Forward Heavy Slash has changed the wall break values just a little bit. Overall, the item hold and the new held version of Thrust are the big deals, and I think that's interesting. I like it a lot. It gives a good new layer to the character. Now, for Millia, it seems a little basic to me, so basically things are faster. So one, Miraz, this is the big quick teleport here. So the recovery is faster. So you can go into special moves better, you can go into supers better, all that kind of stuff. And specifically Lust Shaker. So that is our quick stabby moves here. This also has faster startup, and when you combine the two, that means certain pokes like, say, Heavy Slash into Quick Dash into Lust Shaker are now natural combos. So it's a natural combo close-up, sure, right? But from further out at like max range of the move, you're getting exactly nothing. Now, you add those together. Hey, there we go. All a natural combo. So, yeah, her change list isn't that big. Some other things here like stand kick, says here reduce vertical mid-combo blowback scaling, which as a person who doesn't play Millia, I have no idea what that means. I'm not going to lie to you, right? And just some other things like winger, reduce damage because all the supers are getting nerfed for damage. And that's about it. At bare minimum, I think this just helps her neutral because poke into quick cancel into either, you know, a combo or just basic pressure. When before nothing would be airtight, now it is airtight and there's a true combo. I think that is handy. Now Zato. I think some people are going to get up in their feelings about this one. Zato, here, let's start with the buff, right? Close S is faster. They don't say how much faster, at least a frame faster. Okay, there we go. We got a buff, right? Now, let's summon Eddie. And notice the recovery on Eddie, right? It's a damn sight slower than it's been before this patch, to say the least, right? So Eddie, spamming Eddie, doing all the Eddie-isms, all that kind of stuff, you still can do it, right? But he's going to be out of action a lot longer than he's ever been before in this version of Guilty Gear. So you've got to watch out for that. Now add some other nerfs like Zato's Fly. He's not in the air as long as he was. Not to say, you know, he's not in the air, because he is, but his time airborne has been cut short as well. Other things like command grab damage nerfed, because that's universal mostly across the board. Super damage nerfed, because once again, that's universal mostly across the board. But there is one bright light that's actually pretty interesting. So, if you have Eddie out, and you do break the law, where he turns into the puddle, and you hit down, down specifically while you're in the puddle, and you have Eddie out, then things get interesting. Because you teleport to where Eddie is. So now this gives some value to having like Eddie, you know, behind the opponent, spacing him correctly, right? And then just like, do whatever you're doing, then like, nah, I'm directly on top of you. So this is that tricky stuff, right? I don't know if it's worth the massively increased recovery gauge that Eddie now has, but I think it is pretty interesting and powerful. That said, though, the fact that Eddie's out of commission for so much longer than he normally is definitely an overall big nerf despite the new stuff and the new toy, right? But still, that's the nature of the game. People get nerfed, people get buffed, and this time around, old Zato, he got the bat taken to his knees. So here's hoping the new teleport gimmick lives up to its potential and helps him out. So Ramlethal suffers from, you know, a lot of the universal nerfs, like supers do less damage, all that kind of stuff. Also, her Rekkas, just like, say, Chipp, no more big boy counter hits. So if you're looking to, you know, stagger, pressure, frame trap, all that kind of stuff, the counter hits will simply be a regular counter. No more gigantic time stop. So those options, unfortunately, are gone. Other things that are like kind of sideway changes. So Corsical back kick her overhead is a good deal faster startup now. But now, since it's a good deal faster startup, she no longer can self-combo from it without spending meter to like Roman cancel or something like that, right? Before, she could just, you know, crouch jab, it'd be a natural combo. Now, no longer the case. And yeah, I already mentioned, you know, she's getting the universal nerfs, but just to specifically mention, sword tosses do less damage now. So I know that'll bug people. So, all right, seems like she's losing a lot, right? And also, she's slower too. Her dash, it's not a lot, but her dash has been curtailed just a little bit. So what is she getting for all these nerfs? Well, she has an all-new move. So she can basically smack the ground and then cause an explosion further out. So Big Ol' Rock is basically a good addition to her neutral. It is a fixed distance. It's not like Mortal Kombat where you can aim it. So if you're too close, it'll always miss. If you're exactly full screen, well, that's also not too handy, right? But the thing is, it hits from a good distance of, well, like say stand heavy slash, right? So if you're poking, you're getting those counter hits. Well, wouldn't you know it, it's a natural combo on counter hit, right? And now, what do we get? Well, we can get all sorts of combos, right? We can get kind of basic and still get some respectable damage off of poke, right? Or you can get more advanced. But yeah, so basically her mid-screen poke game is now more valuable because like off a straight heavy slash or something like that, you can now get an actual combo. So that's really, really interesting. And that's basically about it. So she's giving up a lot on the basic things, but once again, universal changes. A lot of characters are going to feel the same pain she's feeling. So don't feel like she's singled out in that specific way. And we get a much faster overhead. Although, once again, no self-combos, unfortunate. And, well, a new gimmicky toy to play around with, right? So, remains to be seen how strong it'll be in time. But at bare minimum, it gives your max range heavy slash and all that. Your max range pokes, it'll give it more teeth if you get a counter hit. Because it's a natural combo and you can do all sorts of things off it as it launches the opponent back to you. So, overall, that is Ramlethal and her basic changes in Season 3. So, Leo, mostly affected by like the universal changes, reducing damage across the board. He is affected by the reversal change in that heavy uppercut here. No longer has invincibility on frame 1. It's still invincible, just not frame 1. If you want frame 1 invincibility, you got to go with the slash version, just to curtail damage on some reversal options. That's fine. Once again, pretty universal change for all the characters that have reversals. The big change, I guess you could say, is Turbulence. So Turbulence just moves further, faster. And to the point, and to that point with a little momentum, this is now a natural combo, right? And off a lot of distances, you can just go stand heavy slash into Turbulence, and it will connect as a natural combo as well. So it's basically better for combo fodder, better for neutral, and just better all around. You're going to see a lot more of it, which is great because obviously if you hold the button, it leaves the back turn stance, right? And all the gimmicks associated with it. So it just makes the move more valuable. And basically, outside a lot of the universal changes, that's about it. So Leo, still Leo. Just make sure if you're spamming reversals, do slash instead of heavy slash. Now, if Leo was really basic, Nagoriyuki is like the one character in every Arxis patch that gets all these weird changes that are like incredible for no reason. It's Nagoriyuki's turn. So let's start with something very basic before we go off the rails. Forward kick, reduced recovery. So recovers faster, that means better on hit, better on block, right? Okay, that's good. Now let's get crazy. So forward heavy slash. Now bounces on regular hit. And if it's a counter hit, well then, hey, big old bounce. Oh, and by the way, on block, it's now a guard crush. Because why not? Also does an incredible amount of chip. So, yeah. Why the F not, right? So that's interesting. Now the giveaway here is it's not special cancelable anymore. So like this is a poke in and of itself. Like you do this to do this, but not to do anything else. But now that it ground bounces, big ground bounce on counter hit, it's a guard crush, like it's worth doing by itself. It's pretty okay. Now let's get silly, y'all. So you know Dragon Punch motion and heavy slash, right? The double follow-up. So the first part's about what you think it is. The second part, though, notice how Testament's crouch blocking here, right? Second part's now a true overhead. Because once again, why the F not? Let's just go crazy, right? So, okay, it's an overhead, but that doesn't mean too much in and of itself in a vacuum, right? But this is, well, this is where we get crazy, don't we? So let's make them stand. So if they stand, then, you know, like naturally, they'll block the overhead because that's how that works. So then why is this working? Beyblade. Spin is now a low. A low. Like you got to crouch block this. You can't stand block this anymore. It's a low. So if you block the first hit of this, you can consider yourself in immediate 50-50 mix-up territory. Because you got overhead, which is very delayable, or you can go right into that low. And have fun blocking is really all I can say to that. So spin, Beyblade, it's subject to a lot of the just, you know, damage scaling increase changes across the board. So it'll do less damage combos, all that kind of stuff. So I figured they said, okay, well, to make it fair, let's give them like a massive 50-50 game that's going to blow up everyone, right? So I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know if you thought that Nagoriyuki needed to be a 50-50 character. but he is a 50-50 character now. And of course, the classic, never forget, while you're worrying about guessing overhead, while you're worried about guessing low, there's always the classic of, you're stupid and you waited and now get command grabbed, right? So, people are going to have to be more defensive than ever against Nagoriyuki, which means he's going to get more bites off than ever. So, have fun. Now, for Giovanna, a lot of the universal stuff, some of the damage nerfs, all that, but the big thing is she has a new move. So this is Chave. I'm not sure the pronunciation, I'm sorry, but yeah, just go back HS. And I know this looks like exactly nothing, right? But what this move does is it supercharges her special moves. So like, let's take something like Sol Nascente, right? So this is like the effective uppercut. And it launches a little bit, the launch has been nerfed also. But yeah, you hit and then there you go, right? And for against Testament, 43 damage. Now, if we do Shave first, and then we do the move, well, geez Louise. So, more damage, for one, and as you can tell, that launch is a lot bigger. So, before, you ain't getting anything off that. Now, with the buff, well, geez Louise, we're getting a bunch off it, aren't we? Yeah. So, that's just one move, and this applies to everything. So, say we go Sepultura, right? And if we do it off Shave, more damage. That's a good deal. What about Drill? So by itself, always a classic, right? We do it off Shave, more damage, and as you can see, it's brief, but it creates the stagger effect. So with all that extra hit stun, you can just go and like stand slash right away, which is not something you can do normally, obviously, right? So more hit stun, more combo potential, all that fun stuff. So yeah, it basically turbocharges every move you have. At bare minimum, it'll give you more damage, and in a lot of the cases, as you can see, it'll give you a lot more combo potential. So a new move that buffs all of our other moves. Very, very interesting. Now Anji. I think Anji lost more than he gained because of the universal changes, but the universal changes I think affect him a bit more than some of the others. But first, let's talk the new thing. So obviously we have spins, and if you correctly guess a move, your spin becomes the counter state, and he has a move out of this counter state now. If you do quarter circle back punch, he'll slap you with a fish. Like, I don't got an elegant term for this, but yeah, like, it is a big old water slap and there's a koi fish in there. That's cool. You obviously could not do this before, and it's a nice animation, but that's you know, about it. And some other things off Fujin. So the fan toss now, off Fujin, you can actually aim it. So you can, as before, just kind of be in place, or you can hold back and gain more backwards momentum, or conversely, you can hold forward and gain forward momentum, right? So this gives him a little bit better of like a projectile game, if you would. Like, it's obviously not a hardcore zoning tool, but it makes it better than it was for certain, because you can do it, run away, or do it and charge forward with it. This is where he loses out. So counter hits. Fujin can no longer get a big boy counter hit. If you want to go for Fujin S, it can no longer get a big boy counter hit. If you want to go for Rin, the overhead, it can no longer get a big boy counter hit. So, you know, fake out, stagger, pressure, all that kind of stuff was a big part of the character. And I know this is universal, and a lot of characters with the Rekka stuff and stagger stuff, they're all losing out in the same way. But Anji was not as good as those other characters, right? Anji is no Chipp. Let's put it that way. So for him to lose out on that kind of stuff in the same way like the actually good characters do, that actually hurts quite a bit. Besides that, kick after spin, the hop, the recovery is reduced, so it's quite a bit quicker. So doing fake outs in the hop and just, you know, pressuring, that is better now. That is a buff. But basically, long story short, I hope you like that fish, because he's given up a lot for that fish. And the fish is the new big thing. So Ino, once again, like everyone else, subject to a lot of the universal changes. Stand heavy slash. The bounce on hit is a little bit better, and they bounce away a little bit less far. So that is nice. That's handy. But the big thing is she has an all-new move. So quarter circle back and slash. And this is Mad Love Agitato. And basically, it leaves her in the airborne state. It's a way to rush forward, just like, you know, your dash, right? But it goes pretty far. As you can see here, like, the range on this is pretty legit. It's about 75% of the screen or so. So that's not bad. And it leaves you in the airborne state. So you can backdash, you can air dash forward, whatever you want to do. And it's as much the same in block. You are in the airborne state. And yes, FYI, it is a guard crush. So you can do this here, and one of the beauties, since this is special, yes, you can still, you know, charge forward, dash, right? But since this is a special, that means you can do this off a block string, right? And you certainly can't dash cancel one of your normals, but this, you do a normal, you can do it, and then get that precious airborne state, and then do all the Eno stuff from there. So that's actually really, really handy. Obviously, if you're doing it in their face and you're charging forward, very subject for someone just to do like 6p in your face. But thankfully, you can still backdash, do Chemical Love or Fireball or whatever, right? You got options. So that's the big thing there. Once again, everything else mostly the universal changes, but a new move that plays into her already know very airborne dynamic that is interesting. So Goldlewis, the big change here is Aerial Typhoon. So specifically every Aerial Typhoon, every permutation, all has faster startup now. And the idea here is for combos, for pressure, for crosses, for gimmicks, whatever, if you're looking to hit someone with an Aerial Typhoon, you're able to hit them with the start of it at the beginning faster. And this is regardless of which Typhoon you're going for, right? So as long as you're going for that, it's just going to be a lot easier. Now, the other thing is, for the first half of the swing, the beginning part of the swing, the Aerial Typhoons, they've also lessened the overall active frames. So if you're connecting at the very start, it'll still work out just fine. Like, that would have never worked before, right? That's thanks to the new startup. But if it doesn't connect right away because it has less overall active frames, basically they're letting you connect with the later active frames easier. So once again, combo setups, gimmicks. If you're looking for direct combo ability at the start, that's easier. And if you're looking for combo ability after the fact, that's also easier now too. So Aerial Typhoons are just better all around. Other little things like Thunderbird, slightly better pop-up. Like, they don't go as back as far on the final hit, which is handy enough, I guess. And, you know, universal nerfs, right down when the system does less damage, because all supers are doing less damage. That's kind of how the cookie crumbles. So not wild changes for Goldlewis, but I think very good. And of course, once again, universal changes are the biggest deal in the end, right? So Wild Assault, I think Goldlewis gets a lot out of that. That's his biggest change, right? An invincible rushing forward move. So Jacko's interesting. So one of the things, her super, it got changed from a throw to a strike. So it's blockable now. It's not like anything else changed. It also does less damage. So that's kind of just even more of a nerf, I guess. Like, it wasn't the kind of command grab, you know, that would get you after the flash, but still, whatever, right? But yeah, the main thing here, of course, as always with Jacko, is minions. So one of the most interesting changes to minion is the minion blow up. So minion blow up is now a guard crush. So after blocking it, as you see, blown back. Also for Wild Assault, she inherits a guard crush Wild Assault as well. So guard crushes are a big part of the game now. So ideally, with all sorts of guard crushes, her offense and pressure should get better yet. Also, the defend command. So when you place your minion down and do defend, things actually change up a little bit here, because now when it defends, it launches the enemy. So if you correctly call them out and, you know, get the defend, that's already a good enough reward, right? But now a free launch on top of the damage, that's really, really good. So if you know they're going to go for something, and your potential for combos, offense damage, all that kind of stuff is definitely going to go up. Now, when it comes to her buff super, something's changed up. So the slash version now has longer duration than it did before. So that's handy, right? You're burning that meter. You want, you know, you're banging for your buck, so it lasts a little bit longer. On the flip here, the heavy slash version does not last as long, but when you do it, you get a full recharge on your gauge. So your servant gauge goes back to max, so all your silly servant gimmicks, well, now you can do them better than ever. So there's a little bit of options, right? So slash longer than it did before, and heavy slash, yeah, I guess the effect is not as long, but the fact that it just refills your servant bar, I think that is kind of handy. Now, admittedly, it takes a galaxy brain to play Jacko. I'm a humble grappler player, so I don't get that galaxy brain. But overall, I think that's some solid changes, right? The extra guard crushes that she didn't have before as well, just helping her general pressure, and she's a crazy pressure character. I think that'll work out in the end. So Happy Chaos eats some of the universal nerfs, right? For damage, all that kind of stuff. That's how it's going to be. He does have some interesting quality of life, though. So steady aim. So from steady aim, everything's been, well, simplified, I guess. So now, when you're in steady aim, down punch reloads. If you're in steady aim, back punch goes into focus. Forward punch goes in the curse, back kick in the roll, forward kick goes in the scapegoat, and back ass just cancels aim, right? So you don't need to input all these other separate animations. Everything has been simplified, just direction and a button, and therefore it makes everything off steady aim faster, basically. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a strict buff, but it's just good quality of life. It'll make you playing the character easier to do in a pinch. Now roll. So roll, when you roll past the enemy, you no longer go that extra distance. You just stop basically right when you cross up. Actually, that's a nice buff. You stay directly on top of the enemy. Before, if you rolled, if you're a little too close, you'd roll all the way past them, right? Now you stop dead where you are. So it leaves you at the exact distance you want to be. So that's actually a nice buff. Now, of course, nerfs. He's going to be a lot more affected by damage scaling across the board on top of, like, you know, supers doing less damage, which is a universal nerf. So it's mostly the universal stuff and quality of life. And of course, the universal stuff is really strong, so that's fine. But yeah, overall, Happy's going to do even less damage than a lot of the other characters because bullets, for the most part, will just scale a lot harder than they did before. And you know what? Fair enough. Now, Baiken, one interesting change out of the gate, forward kick. So a lot of counter hit stuff's been nerfed as we've gone over in the video, but she's actually getting a counter hit buff. So her boot actually now has stagger affected on top of it. So basically just more time in the counter state. Very, very handy. Now Kabari, that is the big old rope. So reduced startup, doesn't say how much. It could be just one frame, because I'll tell you right now, it doesn't combo off like things you would hope. You know, the things you would be looking for, right? So it is, however, the much faster it currently is, but it is still not fast enough to naturally combo off easy combos. Heavy slash version of Kabari, no more big counter. Still get the counter hit, but like so many other moves, no more massive time stop. It was Onsen, specifically in the earlier active frames, now blows back people pretty far away. And I guess probably the biggest change is super, or gunshot. So you may notice it does like the opposite of what it did before. Before it would blow you away, and now it brings you in. And yes, you better believe you can combo after the fact, right? So interesting change for sure. Also, it is technically now a 2-hit combo instead of a single hit, right? But yeah, so it, as my opinion anyways, would make it a lot more useful. Just the fact that you can get combos off of it, off the single shot, right? Opens up a lot more dimensions to the move. Now, one thing, I don't know if I agree with it, but they nerfed the damage on her counter. So, odd decision, but it's the choice they made. I guess they consider it in the same group as a lot of those command grabs that got nerfed. But yeah, overall, some decent changes. Once again, a lot of the universal changes, which, once again, very much benefits from, as a lot of people do with those universal new mechanics. And Gunshot, it's got a whole new lease on life because it's a completely different kind of move now. Now, Testament, some very interesting changes. One, Heavy Slash now has a tumble effect added to it. So now, with a proper tumble effect, very easily goes into Arbiter Sign. Like, no fuss, no muss. That's great. Especially, like, if you're just going for, like, you know, basic block strings. Hey, easy enough ender, right? Arbiter Sign also got some significant buffs by itself. So, either version of the move, the low or the overhead version, they both launch quite a bit higher than they did before. So, Arbiter Sign, Heavy Slash, working with Arbiter Sign, those are great, right? But here's the actual fun change. This is Possession the Teleport, and it has nothing to do with the like actual, you know, set up the gimmick, teleport to the gimmick. You actually have a small amount of air control with it now. So this is the air version specifically, and if you do it normally, you just do it in place, right? But now you have some drift control. So while doing it, you can hold backwards or forwards, and you'll very slightly go in that direction. So let's say here, just going to do it, just neutral jump in the enemy's face, right? If I head backwards, okay, well, I go backwards, and naturally enough, I can attack, right? And if I hold forwards, oh, I just crossed up. And naturally, if you just cross up, well, you can do cross-ups, right? So, yeah, just a little bit of drift, a little bit of air control, and I feel like that's going to help with mix-ups, help up with gimmicks. I find it very interesting that it has a use now, besides just, you know, set up Succubus, teleport to Succubus, right? Like, am I going to cross you up, or am I going to do a fake cross-up and land same side? Now, you gotta guess, right? So that's really cool. I like that quite a bit. Bridget, what changes do we got here? So one of them here, forward heavy slash, the big butt slam, right? Launches a fair bit higher than it used to do, which means at bare minimum here, if you want to go to, say, Roger Dive, it is now a natural combo. Also, it will combo into roll attack, so whatever you can dream up here combo-wise, go explore, hit the lap. Like so many other moves, Kickstart My Heart no longer gets big boy counter if you connect with it. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking to do frame traps or whatever, you got to watch out on that. And of course, a lot of the universal changes, which of course benefit her quite a bit because they're really good. A lot of the universal nerfs to damage, all that kind of stuff as well. Unfortunately, even for Bridget, the command grab tax has come, right? So her command grab does less damage. Another thing, Shoot, specifically here, Shoot travels up higher. This is, as they state, designed as a bit of a nerf, although time will tell how that quite works out. So big takeaway for Bridget, Butt Slam is a good deal more useful than it's ever been. Now, Sin, if you'll pardon the pun, Sin is eating good. He's got quite a few things, including his backdash has more invincibility frames. That's actually a very substantial buff, right? They don't say how much, but I have to assume it's only one, because it'd be game breaking if you had like more than that, right? But still, a better backdash, more invincibility on the backdash, very welcome change. Also welcome, changes to basic pokes. Stand S is now faster startup. So a better button in neutral, it's already got respectable range, right? And faster startup, all the better yet. Attack level on Heavy Slash is going up, so all the benefits with that. And we also have Crouching Heavy Slash. Still knocks up the enemy, as you'd think, right? But it doesn't knock them away as far. So maybe the biggest deal here is Hawkbaker. So during combos, the follow-up now launches higher and leaves the enemy closer, which means you can get some stuff. And I'm talking like stuff just off like basic lights too. He has some teeth off just the basics now. So here, off a basic jab, right? Not bad off a basic jab. Not bad at all. And certainly, sight better than he could do. And also keep in mind, Wild Assault here is definitely a thing, so he can extend even further. And then we got a corner-to-corner wall break off a jab. So the buffs and the universal mechanics, I think they're all treating Sin pretty well. Bedman. So I guess kind of one of the things out of the gate is Bedman, and obviously the error system is a big deal for the character, right? So now whenever you do a wall break, the wall break will happen and you'll still keep your error. So it won't go away. You won't lose it. If you built it, it's not done for, right? So that's actually a fairly sizable deal. Other fun things like Crouch Punch now naturally combos into spin, which is very handy. Always like combos from jabs. Crouch Kick is faster startup. They don't say how much, but I'm assuming at least one frame, which is always good. Also, Bedman's unique air movement where he enters the state, then he has the 8-way dash, right? So they don't go into specifics, but it says you can dash more quickly than before. I don't know if that means you can do the dash state more quickly from like the neutral state where you enter your input, or if the dash itself is a frame or two faster. They don't go into specifics, but it's better some way somehow. And for, such awesome movement, that's always very welcome. Basically, his big gimmick survives the wall break, which is good, because otherwise, before they just got out of jail, they didn't have to deal with the follow-up. Now they still do. And fun things like Crouch Punch being a little bit better, Spin being a little faster, so it goes into Crouch Punch. Also, 6P says has a better hitbox. Hey, that's welcome. So basically just better overall. And finally, Asuka. So Asuka is the newest character and thus just has the least amount of changes because he's not fully explored yet. So specifically here, the Aquila Metron now no longer allows enemies to get the free invincible back roll tech, right? They are just gonna wake up in place. So better knockdown, that's better. And that's about it. So whenever the next patch is, I'm sure he'll get more changes. But for now, that is it. That is all. So that's it for the patch. Being a start of a new season, the big deal is the universal stuff. Like, obviously, everyone has stuff. Some people have more radical changes than others, pointing at you, Nagoriyuki, right? And some people are almost the same. I'm sure the wild character balance shifts will happen more in following patches, because the universal mechanics added in this patch are very strong. They're game-changing mechanics, right? You do not play the game the same way you did before. So it's going to take time to see who benefits more than others, because even though they're technically universal mechanics usually don't benefit people universally. You know, some people win more than others. So we'll see how it shakes out. But overall, I think Season 3 is very strong. Johnny got added too. I think Johnny's really cool. I think Johnny's very fun to play. And, well, there'll be more balance changes in time. Some characters have all new moves. They did state the goal is basically for everyone to get new stuff. Just it'll be kind of doled out over time. So whenever the next patch is after this one, hopefully a couple of characters get new moves as well. And that's the video. Tried to cover a lot of the bigger highlights for every character. There are a lot of really small changes that don't necessarily benefit full discussion. Once again, please check the full patch notes. That is linked in the video description. But otherwise, hopefully, these are all the big notes. And, well, let me know what you think about the video itself and also about Guilty Gear Strive Season 3, because I think it's pretty interesting. Once again, it's going to change up how the game just works across the board. And we're going to have to see how it all shakes out. But until then, that's the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well. And go out and play some Guilty Gear.